From The Australian, here's what's on the front. I'm Kristen Amiot. It's Friday, January 23, 2026. It was a stunning moment in an already dramatic week of politics. Just hours after a slew of national senators quit the shadow frontbench, the coalition was done, over, split again. Now Sussan Ley's leadership is hanging by a thread. So what next for Australian Conservative politics? That's today's episode. You'd be hard-pressed to find a more fitting metaphor. First, the bombshell.
But she has also forced the coalition into an untenable position that can no longer continue.
Then, the alarm bells. The Senate wing evacuated as sirens blared and confusion swirled. This was the scene at Parliament House on Thursday morning as politicians, staffers and journalists grappled with the news the coalition is no more.
The federal coalition is in crisis this afternoon. The Nationals sensationally splitting from their Liberal colleagues for the second time in less than a year.
I spoke with The Australian's senior political reporter Sarah Eisen on Thursday afternoon. Sarah, take me behind the scenes at Parliament House right now. What kind of conversations are happening in the aftermath of Thursday's announcement the Nationals will leave the coalition for a second time?
One of those strange moments where Parliament House itself is almost quiet because all of the politicians have left the building, and yet it's such a frenzy and flurry of activity outside of this place. This came as a shock, I can tell you, to almost everyone. So it's actually caught people unawares, and it's just real shock and people trying to get a handle on where to from here.
According to Nationals leader David Littleproud, Sussan Ley's handling of the government's new hate speech legislation was the straw that broke the camel's back.
This was a rushed process. We are talking about national security matters with complex legislation that should be scrutinised and understood before we're forced to vote on it. That was the disappointing fact of it.
On Wednesday night, Senators Bridget McKenzie, Susan McDonald and Ross Cadell crossed the floor to vote against the bill. Littleproud said they were within their rights to do that because the amended legislation didn't go through the usual party room process before the vote. But McKenzie, McDonald and Cadell quit the shadow cabinet anyway, and Ley accepted their resignations. Within hours, their National Party colleagues, including Littleproud, followed, the final nail in the coalition's coffin. What does this dramatic fracturing of the coalition mean for Sussan Ley's leadership?
It does mean her leadership is under threat. Of course, those closest to her and the moderates and those most supportive of Sussan would say that giving in this instance is essentially giving into blackmail from the Nationals, and that also that isn't a good idea. Of course, they're the ones who are her biggest backers. Those who aren't, they've said, of course, her leadership is untenable. So it really is a moment of crisis, but it is in Sussan Ley's hands.
Sussan Ley now has a choice: wait for a leadership spill or resign on her own terms and in her own time.
It's very much agreed that the Liberal Party can't enter the next sitting fortnight with this still hanging over them. The view is it would have to be by then at the latest. There's a hope that it would be sorted out more like mid-next week or by the end of next week, so you enter Parliament completely settled on who your leader is and what's going on. But it's very much something that needs to be resolved one way or another, and it very much looks like it has to be resolved in one way within the next week and a half, 2 weeks.
Have any potential successors to Sussan Ley emerged, or is it a case of anything or anyone is better than the status quo at this point?
You know, what's really kind of bitterly ironic about this is that we were talking about potential successors to Sussan Ley, it might have been 4 months ago or something like that. And so at that time, people were discussing people like Angus Taylor or Andrew Hastie, or on the more moderate side, Tim Wilson. But then since Bondi and then since Sussan Ley landed some hits on Albanese when it came to Labor having to gut its hate speech bill. That really wasn't happening, this leadership speculation. It caught even those who would love to see the back of Sussan Ley within her own party. It caught them by surprise. But the point to make here is that we're still talking about Andrew Hastie, who has publicly declared before that he would be up for leadership. Angus Taylor, he's more experienced than Andrew Hastie, he's former treasurer, but he's also more tainted to a degree. People blame him somewhat for the weak economic platform that the party took to the election. So it's between those two when it comes to the Conservative candidate. A lot of their Conservative colleagues have communicated to Hastie and to Angus Taylor that you guys need to sort it out amongst yourselves. We're not going to be forced to vote for either of you. Even some people have told these two men, I'm not going to vote for either of you if you make me choose. So there's a sense of they have to come to a decision. And the most talked about moderate candidate, interestingly, is Tim Wilson. He's the member for Goldstein. He came back after having been booted from Parliament in 22 through the election. So he's a lot newer, a lot fresher, more of that kind of dark horse. But he is one of those names being discussed, and for good reason, in terms of his expertise, in terms of his respect across the Liberal and Conservative factions. But of course, after Sussan Ley's election by the moderate party, I think a lot of Conservatives are keen to have their go now, and there would be quite a lot of support for the Andrew Hastie and Angus Taylors of the world.
For all that was said about her on Thursday, Sussan Ley was conspicuously quiet. She indicated early in the piece she wouldn't be talking politics on the National Day of Mourning for victims of the Bondi terror attack. The question is, should she have seen this coming?
Look, I think people have been talking about the Liberal Party, the future of the Conservative movement, Sussan Ley's leadership. This has been something that is not new. It happened very quickly after her election. The point, though, is that they didn't see it coming this week because Sussan Ley and key frontbenchers landed what was shaping up to be a pretty big win, having got Labor to gut its bill, having seen people like Andrew Hastie and some other very outspoken Conservative MPs actually vote with Sussan Ley and her party rather than cross the floor on this legislation that they long said they absolutely hated, right? And they're backbenchers. They can do that with absolutely no repercussion. There's a real sense of some wins. Should they have seen it coming on Wednesday, Thursday? Absolutely not. It very much blindsided a lot of people.
Coming up, what next for the Nationals? Let's talk about the Nationals for a moment. Does this bolster their position in the Australian political landscape, or were they safer inside the coalition in the long run?
I've had a National tell me this is the end of their career. So I don't think there's a sense of crazy optimism that this is going to put them in a great position going forward. Equally, they felt that their Liberal colleagues, at least under Sussan Ley, were happy to take their votes but didn't really respect them or maybe didn't listen to them beyond that. And so there's a self-righteousness there. People aren't bemoaning this decision or saying David Littleproud's made the wrong move or we made the wrong move. They're really backing it and saying we were principled and so on. But at the same time, a lot of them are pretty clear-eyed on the fact that this could go very badly when it comes to just how hard that would be to retain seats and so forth going forward, particularly with questions over Liberal Party support should they go to the election as two separate parties. I mean, that's a live and very much uncertain question. So it's a bit of both. It's a bit of, as I said, that self-righteous, we did the right thing, but we're probably going to suffer for this in other ways. I think that's broadly where the party's at. But unlike the Liberals, it's less fractious. People are less angry at each other right now within the Nationals.
Just lastly, Sarah, we've been here once before, not too long ago. Is there a world in which the coalition kisses and makes up again, or is it going to stick this time?
I suppose it depends who you talk to. I know a lot of Liberals are really angry, frankly. And even before the confirmation from David Littleproud about frontbench resignations and a coalition split, we're saying we should have split from them last year properly during that brief divorce. So I think there's a fair bit of frustration amongst Liberals, and I think a kiss and make up would need a fair bit of time. I don't think that's an immediate thing. The thing, though, I suppose that needs to be considered is if and when Sussan Ley is replaced, who that person is and if David Littleproud can remain the Nationals' leader. I think there'll be plenty of Liberals that will say no because of how hurt they are right now and frustrated with the Nats. There'll be plenty of Nats that say yes, and that's because they reflect on Peter Dutton and David Littleproud being able to get over some pretty big disagreements and being able to push forward. But that David Littleproud and sort of the three men that I raised before, who are the potential leaders, that actually could really work. They can see that working a lot better, and they imagine that maybe a leader that gets on with David personally could bring his party room along, and it's not some kind of foregone conclusion, though if the majority of the Liberal party room says we are absolutely not getting back together with the coalition with David Littleproud there, I mean, no matter who you are as leader, you have to listen. The Nationals say they will consider that should that time come or that gauntlet be thrown down. So could the coalition get back together? Yes. Is it easy or straightforward or clear how that would happen and under whose leadership for both parties? Absolutely not.
Sarah Eisen is a senior political reporter with The Australian. For all the latest on the fallout from the coalition's big split, visit theaustralian.com.au.